Hi everyone, we're live here at IAGLR 2017 with Dr. Jim Diana kicking off the conference for the week. So while we give everyone a chance to log in here, I'm going to throw up all the information for everyone. The hashtag for the conference is hashtag IAGLR 2017. If you want to be able to connect with the broadcast afterwards, feel free to tweet us at Scicomm Monday, and then also follow along with the hashtag Sci Monday for anything Scicomm Monday related when it comes to the conference here. So with that, I want to welcome Jim Diana to Scicomm Monday. We're live here from Detroit, Michigan.
Yep.
So what can you tell us? What is IAGLR for those of the folks out there who don't know?
Sure. So IAGLR is the International Association for Great Lakes Research, and this is their 60th annual meeting. The meetings focus, like it says, on Great Lakes research. A lot of things on fisheries and water quality, and also human aspects like problems with the Great Lakes and the economics and sort of coastal development and all sorts of things like that. And really, it's just a great opportunity for a lot of researchers, both in the U.S. and Canada, to get together and focus on where we are and where we should be going as far as Great Lakes are concerned.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've always really admired about IAGLR is that dual nationality. There's a lot of input from both sides of the border when it comes to think of some of my closest friends here that have at IAGLR is a Canadian lab from McMaster University.
Nice.
And it's really nice to be able to foster those relationships. I don't know if that's been your experience here with IAGLR?
It has, and actually it's particularly personal for me because I did graduate work in Canada.
Okay.
And so spent 4 years living there. Both of my kids are dual Canadian citizens, so I have a close feel for the country of Canada and for Canadian researchers.
So for everyone out there, any questions you have about IAGLR or the beautiful scenery back here behind us, you can see part of the river that connects two of the Great Lakes, Lake Huron and Lake Erie, back behind us, and you can actually see those buildings there are Windsor, Ontario, so that is Canada back behind us there. So any questions you have about the conference or with Jim Diana, because you have done some amazing work. You're actually having a symposium about your work. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, if you're around long enough, you have enough people that you've worked with. I am retiring this year after 38 years of teaching at the University of Michigan, and a bunch of my students got together and decided to run a symposium just sort of the work that has been done as a result of my mentorship. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I've always had close relationships with my students. I always am interested in seeing them at meetings and hearing how their lives are going. So this will be a particularly special day for me.
Kind of like a homecoming for all your students and you?
Yeah, and I'm sure all of them can't make it, but quite a few are, and that's a really nice thing for them to do for me.
Yeah, that's the thing, the community that IAGLR has is really nice and always welcoming. I always kind of feel like it's extended family here when it comes to the different scientists.
I agree.
So can you tell us maybe a few of the problems that the Great Lakes are seeing that might be addressed during the conference this week with the
Sure.
scientists?
So a lot of problems that are occurring, particularly in the connecting waters like the Detroit River and the St. Clair River, where dredging has caused damage to fish habitat, and we're trying to restore fish habitat. I've been involved with a project just a few miles upstream on Belle Isle where we've put in 2 spawning reefs for, well, not just for lake sturgeon, but focused on lake sturgeon. And we've done the same thing throughout the St. Clair River in trying to get the sturgeon population to become reestablished, and as well as other fish that like to spawn on rocks. And so far these reefs have been very successful in terms of attracting adult sturgeon to come in and spawn, attracting other species that we can then follow their success as well. And so that's one. Restoration is a big part of this conference.
Yeah, a side question there. Can you tell us a little bit more about Great Lakes Reefs? Because my niece, who's 7 years old, we had Sarah Orlando on last week, who's from Ohio Sea Grant, and we were talking about reefs on there, and my niece was really interested. She's like, Great Lakes Reefs, what are those? Can you explain? Because we think of reefs, most time we think of something like the Great Barrier Reef, or that big coral reef. Can you talk to us maybe of what a Great Lake Reef is for
Sure.
everyone out there we might not know?
So most of the Great Lakes bottom is sand and silt. And there's very little rocky habitat. When you get up into Lake Superior near the shore, it's a little different in some areas too. But historically, rocky habitat was relatively rare. And so most of the reefs we reestablish are rock substrate put in to try to attract fish that spawn or spend part of their life history on rocks. There have been rock reefs reestablished in places like Saginaw Bay, but most of the reefs have been put into river connecting waters of the Great Lakes so far. And you know, sometimes it's the major limiting factor to the population is a place to spawn, and we've tended to damage those places most commonly. And so siltation on the rocks has been a problem, as well as just dredging out and clearing those so ships can go through.
All right, for those of you who are out there right now, we just want to do a quick double check because it looks like Periscope might be having a few issues. So if anyone is out there, if you want to just kind of send us a quick message, a quick question or anything, so that way we know everything is working just fine. So it's the one thing when you're dealing with on the edge of technology. Hi, thank you, NatBad. Thank you so much. Great, because the feed I have coming into my iPad said that the broadcast ended. So a little worried there, but thank you for letting us know that everything is still working fine. Or Illinois Sea Grant. Hi, great to see you. Thank you that you're actually in here. So with that, great. Glad to hear everything's working good. So I know with me, like, I study invasive species. How big of an issue do you find that in your work with invasive species with Great Lakes?
That's a huge issue. I mean, we have introduced intentionally some of these species that have become invasive, like carp, and then some have just gotten in on their own. But in both cases, many species have caused dramatic change. I mean, sometimes somewhat positive, sometimes not so positive. A kind of good example, the zebra mussel that, you know, has cleared up the water, but really changed the whole way energy flows through the lakes, and wiped out some species and helped others. And so it's a kind of a constant changing environment because of the input and extension of invasive species. And it's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse, probably.
You think most of that is because of the shipping that goes on here, the ballast water?
Well, a lot has been that.
Okay.
But you know, the more we open up the waterways, and the more we improve the waterways, so that things can survive in places where they couldn't before. You know, a great example of that is how sea lamprey are thriving in many rivers where previously they couldn't spawn, just because we cleaned up the rivers, and now, unfortunately, we have to deal with them.
Yeah, this is great habitat. Let's move there.
Yeah. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, one of the bad things of cleaning up the messes that we've made over the past century is now we're making pristine habitat for everyone, even those we might not want here. Mm-hmm. So we have a question coming in from Barry. Can or do fish like sturgeon learn to spawn in a new medium? Or maybe, I think he's a medium probably is what he's going for.
I don't think so. I mean, over evolutionary time possibly, but there's a sort of co-adaptation that the fish have an ability to produce eggs that can tolerate, say, good oxygen conditions, but then have to be hidden, or can tolerate poor oxygen conditions and can just be thrown out in the environment. But eggs are, and the whole life history, the migrations that the fish show and the selection of habitat tends to be so linked, they just don't behaviorally switch very much. An example I'm very familiar with, we've done a lot of work on muskies, mostly in inland lakes, but also in Green Bay. And muskies will continue to go to the same place where they spawn, and spawn in places that are just pathetic. And there could be other places on the lake that are suitable, but they don't seem to figure it out. Their life history is formed around apparently selecting and continuing to spawn in the same place. It makes sense with species that have to migrate a long way because they don't know what those places are like, where they end up. So the sturgeon that spawn in the Detroit River coming from probably Lake Erie most of the time, and they only come to the Detroit River to spawn and then leave. So they don't know what the conditions are like on that spawning reef beyond when they're there. And so in those cases, homing really helps. It helps them they choose a place at least that they were successful at being born, so the next species or the next individuals might be equally successful.
So when you're saying places that are just absolutely disgusting and not that good, like, places where we humans might not swim, or maybe just a place that isn't prone for, that's not good habitat for those particular fish?
Well, the Muskie example in Green Bay, we have been stocking muskie to try to reestablish the population, and they stock them in the Fox River, which comes into southern Green Bay, one of the most nasty rivers I've seen. And when we set nets out, they get loaded down with junk. But the fish come back to spawn where they were stocked.
Okay.
So they've identified that as their habitat. And so now, as we realize that, people are changing the way they do reintroductions to try to bring them to good spots to stock them. And they're seeing success as a result of that.
Since you've done research on muskies, do you have any tips or tricks for actually catching muskies for those of us who may want to finally catch one at some point in time in their lives?
Well, I'm not the best myself. I have caught muskie, but I certainly haven't caught the giant ones. You have to fish a lot.
Okay.
That's the biggest success. They call it the fish of 10,000 casts. If you're casting for them, that's about what it takes. And so, I don't know.
I'm still only in a couple hundreds.
Yeah, you might be in 100 a day, so 10,000 would be quite a while.
Okay. That's good to know. So I guess what are some of the symposiums that you're looking forward to this week, the ones that you kind of have circled on your program there that you're really interested in?
So the restoration one is one I'm really interested in, the bringing together the people who have been working on these reef studies. Of course, my own retirement one is another one. Tomorrow we're having the Seafood Summit. It's an event that Michigan Sea Grant puts on every year. I happen to be the director of Michigan Sea Grant, and we try to bring people together to talk about commercial fishing and aquaculture and the sustainability and the quality of the crop that comes out of it. And then we have a banquet after that focuses on Michigan seafood. So it's a real nice event, and it's sort of celebrating our history and hopefully our future in producing fish to eat from the Great Lakes. So that's another one of my favorites, and it'll be all day tomorrow.
For those folks out there who don't know what the Sea Grant is, can you tell us a little bit about it? Because some folks are probably thinking, Sea Grant, we're in the middle of the continental United States here. What are you talking about?
Michigan.
Right? Yeah.
So, sure. Sea Grant is a national program funded by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it's in 32 different states, 33 programs. Some states have combined programs and some states have multiple programs. Mostly along the ocean coast, but there are 8 states in the Great Lakes coast that also are involved. And have been involved since the beginning. Michigan has been in Sea Grant for 47 years now. And Sea Grant is celebrating its 50th year now, so that was really about its start.
Sea Grant, nice tune-up with having it be the 60th for IAGLR.
Yeah. So Sea Grant recently has been kind of in the spotlight because President Trump proposed zeroing it out of the budget, not only for next year, but even for this year, which was pretty scary. Recently,
even
we
for
found
those
out.
Of you who are retired, it's still scary.
Well, anybody who runs a company or a business would know this. You try to have a store of enough money that even if everything falls apart today, you don't fall apart for a while. Mm-hmm. So we're set for until January, even if we didn't get any more money. Now we've gotten the final part of this year, so we're back in the business, but right away in the fall we'll start again with trying to get in the budget for next year, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I know from the university side of things, like, we're really concerned with the fact that there was talk about taking the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative from $300 million down to $10 million, and all of us grad students were freaking out because we might not have any funding, for our projects. So yes, definitely, fingers crossed. Yes, thank you, Illinois Sea Grant, for sure. So I guess with that, like, with the funds that Sea Grant gets, can you tell us maybe, like, what benefits that the people of the Great Lakes get from that money being spent?
Absolutely. So we run a program much like a land-grant college throughout the U.S. would do. Michigan Sea Grant is jointly run between University of Michigan and Michigan State University. And Michigan State University has a number of extension educators, a couple that are in Lansing, but then throughout the state. We have people placed as well in coastal communities, and they're trying to both help the coastal communities in their region in terms of development, but then flip it around, bring back to us what are those areas that we ought to be doing research to focus our work back more on the things that they need. And we've done a whole variety of projects. The one I'm really pleased with recently is one which we call our Sustainable Small Harbors Project. And we've gone into a number of communities and run a series of charrettes with the local people to try to envision what could their harbor be like, how could it be funded, how could it better connect with the city, how could it better be able to be run so that when time comes for dredging proposals or whatever they have to do to keep the harbor going, they're ready to do it. And so, we've been tremendously successful. A lot of these small communities suffer because they don't have the people to really help them plan. You know, they don't have harbor masters. I mean, they have harbor masters, but they don't have people who really understand harbor design or dredging or really economics of how you fund these kinds of programs. And so, so providing university expertise to those groups have been tremendously successful.
Yeah, I remember reading a couple years back that there were some issues with the water levels of the Great Lakes dropping so much that a lot of harbors were having to really dredge out so that way people could still use those. Is that still a problem, or have the levels risen back up?
They've risen a lot. So, you know, the Great Lakes has cycles of water level. It gets high. I don't know what the timing of the cycle is, but back in the 80s, it was so high that people were complaining because the cliffs were falling in and their houses were falling into the water. There's nothing we can really do about high water to drain it.
Here's
People think we can
you
drain it faster, but that doesn't, it's not really feasible.
We have a question coming in. Do Asian carp pose a threat to our natural fisheries? Probably obvious answer, but what can we possibly do about that?
Yeah. So, you know, I think the problem with Asian carp will not be as severe as you might think. So if your image of Asian carp is what you see on the Illinois River, and they're all jumping and somebody comes by with a boat and they're landing in their boats and stuff, if you're out in the middle of the Great Lakes, you're not going to see that. If they really became established, maybe some of our bigger rivers, especially the ones that are fairly productive, turbid, like the Grand River, if they got into Lake Erie, those places are suitable carp habitat. Open lake has got really no food for them, and so they're not going to be abundant much there. They might migrate through them, but they'll probably work their way up along the coast. That doesn't mean they won't have damage. And who knows what that damage might be. They forage on a lot of, well, each of the species are different. The bighead carp is a zooplanktivore, the silver carp is a phytoplanktivore, so they go through and filter out phytoplankton. There aren't many phytoplankton in the Great Lakes now because the zebra mussels have taken care of them all. So, so maybe the zebra mussels have set up a situation where the carp won't expand as dramatically as we think. But if it get into the rivers, and especially rivers where there's enough room, they move upstream and spawn, and their eggs float downstream, and they have to remain buoyant for a considerable period of time. One of the things that might stop their spread is that we have dams on all our rivers within about 25 miles of the shoreline, so they don't really have the ability necessarily to get upstream far enough to be successful at spawning much. In the Mississippi River system, that's completely the opposite. That's why they've been so successful.
Yeah, I know that there have been dams that have been taken down. That seems to kind of be the thing that's going on.
Yeah.
So that might actually be something that could be detrimental rather than beneficial to the rivers and the Great Lakes if the dams are coming down, at least in this particular instance.
Absolutely. So the same thing is true with the round goby. You know, you bring the dam down, you allow sea lampreys in, you allow round gobies in. If that's a place where they're likely to be abundant, then you may not want to take the last dam down. Right now they're having a big debate in Traverse City about the Boardman River and its dams, and they want to selectively pass certain fish upstream, but they don't want to pass everything upstream. And what they might allow to get upstream and how they might control that is really a whole new area. We usually think of tearing down dams or building fish passage to get all fish to move through, but we don't really want all fish to move through.
Yeah, definitely not those invasives. I know with my own work, all the places I was sampling, there was always a round goby at every single spot, and it just was kind of disheartening to see that. Now all my sampling locations were drowned river mouth lakes directly connected, so it wasn't really surprising, but it still is disheartening when you really actually can physically see that in front of you rather than just reading through papers or seeing through other folks' work. So with Asian carp, to kind of continue on the question that was asked, there's been reports that there are grass carp, which are one of the Asian carp in the Great Lakes. What can you tell us a little bit about that?
So grass carp are in Lake Erie. Grass carp were popular to use for vegetation control in lakes, and so Michigan
name?
The name is for that. They eat tremendous amounts of vegetation, maybe up to their whole body weight per day.
Oh wow!
You know, so
I couldn't do that.
No.
I was a big eater back in high school because I'd be running 10 miles a day.
Yeah, we're far from that. So they're really good at controlling vegetation, and they were brought into some areas and stocked in lakes with the intent of controlling vegetation, but were able to escape. And I won't put any blame on any particular states, but I know the state of Michigan has banned the import of grass carp, even hybrid grass carp, which are supposed to be not possible to reproduce. Anyway, so the grass carp is in Lake Erie and has been for quite some time, and really hasn't gotten to huge population numbers.
Yeah, because we were starting to hear reports that there might be, we have a question coming, so I'll go to that instead. Could retaining ponds be created at dams to eliminate or assist fish movement?
So different fish will pass dams in certain ways. So, for example, salmon will jump. You've seen pictures of them jumping upstream. So you can make these dams where there's a series of weirs and they'll jump over them. Sturgeon won't do that. They'll swim through the water, but they won't go there. So you have to make a fairly big channel that they can pass through because they're very large fish. Others, might only go through fairly slow water. So really, slow water near the area, ponds around the side might attract certain fish. Others might avoid it. Some fish are looking for a current. That's what they're following upstream to find their way upstream. So oftentimes fish passage requires an active current, whereas in other places it might require a resting place somewhere along the way. So there's lots of different ways people have tried to pass fish, even to the point in the East Coast where they're passing Atlantic salmon by building a big, what they call an elevator. Basically, it's a big room. The fish swim into the room, they lift them up, and they drop them on the other side of the dam. Pretty expensive way of going, but for the Atlantic salmon and the shad, they don't seem to go upstream through fish ladders like others do. So there's all kinds of designs, and there's still a lot we can learn about how to get fish upstream.
I just want to point out for everyone, if you look right behind us, you can see one of those great big Great Lakes freighters passing through. You'll see that normal occurrence here from the Cobo Center. So it definitely is a really beautiful site to be able to have IAGLR here. I think, usually IAGLR seems to be at universities, and so what was the real desire to be able to have it here in Detroit at a big event center like the Cobo Center?
So we've held IAGLR at the University of Michigan campus, I think 15 years ago, something like that. And this time we joined together Michigan Sea Grant, the University of Michigan, and Wayne State University to co-sponsor the event. And the idea was to bring people to Detroit because a lot of people have a really bad image of Detroit, and there's been a real restoration of the waterfront here. And I think that bringing a lot of our colleagues in to see that is a positive way to put something on Detroit that really has been pretty dramatic, the changes that have occurred along the riverfront in Detroit.
Yeah, do you think that's mostly, folks maybe still have those issues of thinking, maybe like the 68 riots or, all the other bad news you hear about the crime and things like that, and that's not necessarily the case in all spots of Detroit. There are some very beautiful areas that really are highlighted, through places like this. I mean, you look down here, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of tempting right now just to end the broadcast and go walking down there. So, but yeah, you think having events like this are going to continue to help rebuild the city to a place where it's more that destination rather than, oh, do we have to go to Detroit?
I hope so. You know, I think that a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into restoring Detroit and bringing Detroit up. And, you know, I'd like to see that some successes, because obviously the economy drives that. If people come here more and spend more money, there will be more improvements. And, you know, without that kind of activity, it's going to be difficult. So yeah, we were happy to have it here in Detroit. We got great cooperation out of people around here. It was a little different having it in a big facility. We're in Cobo Center, which is the same place they had the International Auto Show. Now, obviously, we're not as big as the International Auto Show, but we got great cooperation from the people that were here in terms of getting a place, getting hotels, all of that. And that's been, you know, I think it's been just really, really positive. I would say if anybody else was planning a conference and wanted to come to a place like this, Detroit's great for it.
Hint, hint, Wildlife Society. Maybe in a couple of years, come to Detroit, have it here. So I know Wildlife Society, there's a lot of big craft beer drinkers there, and Detroit, I've been told by the grad students at Wayne State that there's a lot of great breweries around here.
There are. The whole region. Michigan is a great, you know, craft beer state. As part of our Seafood Summit, we've had 2 different beer sponsors in the past. I'm not sure where we got on this year's, so I won't mention their name. But Shorts in Bel Air sponsored the one that was held up in Traverse City, and New Holland Brewing did the one that was in Detroit. I'm sorry, in Lansing. And so, yeah, we do have great local beer types. And at the event in Lansing, they had a different beer for they had several courses of fish, 5, I think. Different beer for every course of fish.
Wow.
And I took the challenge and made sure I drank 1 beer of those types for every course. And it was a little tough, but I made it.
You made it through.
I made it through.
For the sake of Michigan craft beers, you
That's
did
right.
it. Yeah, I can say I'm from the west side of Michigan, just south of Grand Rapids, and we definitely love all the craft beers over there. It's a really amazing place to be in Grand Rapids. So it would be nice to be able to compare the west side breweries to the east side breweries here. But yeah, for those of you who are the fans of the microbrews out there, Michigan definitely is a great place to come and enjoy. So you've got to try them all. They're so good. I'm always finding a new favorite, it seems like, when it comes to them.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that Bell's was like the only one. Now, you know, there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's still a state holiday whenever they release their Oberon in the spring. So for Bell's Brewery, if you haven't tried their Oberon, definitely go out there and give it a shot. You won't regret it. So we just have a couple minutes left here. So any last questions you have about IAGLR or with Jim's work or anything about the Great Lakes here, feel free to send those in. So throughout the week here, there's obviously a lot of great science, but what are some of the other events that are going on? You were talking about the summit. What other sort of activities are all the scientists going to be up to?
So on Thursday night, we're having a banquet, and it's on the Detroit Princess, which is a big boat sitting right out
Let's see if we could
on the
get you
shoreline
guys
there.
a look there. You can kind of see the top of it right above the Cobo sign there. So
Yeah, so we'll have somewhere around 600 to 800 people cruising on the river and eating and enjoying company during that time. We're having a reception tonight here at Cobo to sort of open the event. We have a number of outside activities. The EPA is bringing in the Lake Guardian, and there are going to be tours of the Lake Guardian, which is their large research vessel for the Great Lakes. It's I think 125-foot vessel, which is big. I've taken my classes out on it a couple of times. And so all of that, those kinds of outside things will occur. I was trying to think, we were going to have a bio-blitz on Belle Isle. I think that maybe happened yesterday.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I know that there's the student mixture that's going to be happening, and then I also heard that there is going to be a student mentor event. I think it's tomorrow night as well.
Yeah, there's a student mentor event. There's a student and mixer lunch, I think, and a mentor thing is in the evening.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of good opportunities for students out there to be able to network with each other and with folks who are already established scientists. So since we're just about out of time, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and definitely a big thank you to Jim Diana here for coming on. And to Solomon, you finally tuned in. Solomon David, one of Jim's former students, is saying that you can hear great stories about Jim on Wednesday. So yes,
don't believe a word he says.
Yeah, as soon as we go off air, I'm going to try to see if I can get a good Solomon story out of Jim here, so I can have something to torture Solomon with a little bit later. So, but no, Jim, thank you so much. It's been a great way to be able to kick off IAGLR 2017. And to everyone else out there, keep tuning in. At 4 o'clock, we're going to be, the lab's definitely going to share stories. Oh, good. Thank you, Solomon. So yeah, at 4 o'clock, we're going to be live with some of the speakers from the upcoming Social Great Lakes Symposium that's going to be held tomorrow from 1:20 to 5:20 p.m. And we'll be broadcasting that live. But at the 4 o'clock regular scheduled session of Scicomm Monday, we'll be talking with Katie O'Reilly, one of the co-chairs, Aria Fournier, just completed her PhD. I kind of keep wanting to call her a PhD candidate, but now she's actually Dr. Ariel.
Great.
So she'll be joining us as well. And then Jordan Rudder, who is the web communications person for the American Ornithological Society, will also be here. So make sure you tune in a half hour for that fun. We'll be talking about Scicomm and how it relates to the Great Lakes. So, and beyond that, keep tuning in, because we'll be broadcasting throughout the week with different events, and they might not always be well publicized before it happens, because some of them might be happening fast and furious. So with that, if you aren't able to tune in, have a great rest of your afternoon, and if you're able to tune in a half hour, we'll see you shortly. So thank you.
Thank you.